Are you having trouble seating your tubeless tires? Maybe you have a new wheel set and you've just tried everything and you don't know what to do or what's going wrong. There could be a reason that's often overlooked: asymmetrical or offset rims. Do you have those? It's easy to know by just looking and seeing if the spoke holes are off to one side. Many brands utilize this now to make stronger, stiffer wheels, and having these offset spoke holes seem like it shouldn't be a problem. But especially when you go to replace your tires, what you'll have happen is, on these newer wheels, the rim tape is going to make dimples where the spoke holes are. Now, usually they would be in the center of the rim. But what we have going on here is that these dimples are all close to the sidewall, off to the side. So if you had your tire in the center channel and you're trying to inflate it, air and sealant can be leaking out where the spoke holes are and where your rim tape is. And that could be a big problem. And you can be struggling, and it just won't seat. So we're going to talk about how to make you a master of seating tubeless tires on asymmetrical or offset rims. The spoke hole nipples, the holes here you see, they're offset on these wheels to one side to compensate for this drive side that takes up so much room, which is important to know because you got to know which side you're going to set your bead to in order to inflate it easily and not have air and sealant leaking out. Okay, so on this one, the rear wheel, the drive side's the biggest thing, so the spoke holes are off to the opposite side. Now, you might think the front wheel is going to be the same. It's important to know it's not. Because on the front wheel, the spoke holes are on the opposite side because on the front wheel, it doesn't have a cassette. It has the brake rotor, which is taking up more space, so the spoke holes are off to the other side. The big trick about this whole thing is just having the tire seated against the wall of where the spoke holes are the closest. I'm going to seat this side of the wall, the tire bead against that first. You can see on this tire how I've done that. This side, the far side, is all beaded really tight. And then I'm going to cinch this one in. When I inflate it, it's going to push this together. So you just want to seat this side first. Choose your adventure. If you want to use a tube and you got a floppy jalopy like this one, or you just put on fresh rim tape, or if you got another tire and you feel confident about it, you could do it without tubes as well. What do I think you need to make a tubeless tire setup go great no matter what? It's going to be a really good tire lever. I like these Pedro's soft plastic ones. They're great. They're thick. They're amazing. You're going to need your sealant of your choice. Everybody has different opinions on that. I've had great success with either one of these. I like using a valve core remover. It's going to be a really good trick too. Stance makes a really good one. You're going to need some kind of inflation air supply. Something good to make it really go well. It could be a good floor pump with a big chamber on it, an additional chamber. I like using air compressor. A lot of manufacturers say not to use an air compressor. You have to be very careful that you don't hurt yourself, number one, your wheels, or your tires. But another thing that I like to use is going to be tubes. Tubes, I think, can make this process go really well, especially if you have to apply rim tape like these wheels are going to need. If you need to seat your rim tape and you've got tires that already have some kinks in them, this is going to get the kinks out. All right, let's do it. One important step before installing tubeless tires on your asymmetrical rims is inspecting your wheel itself. One thing is rim tape, and you can notice a lot of things happening in here, like it's gotten pulled to one side over here. You see it's pulling to one side and there's actually sealant kind of built up right there, probably trying to clog it. Where the rim tape comes together, often this bleeds in right in there, and that's a recipe for disaster, and you're going to want to fill that, because basically, even right here, if sealant is trying to go into your rim through the spoke hole nipple, you're going to have a lot of problems. Here you could see it as well. So you're definitely going to have to replace your rim tape on this one. Also, one thing to do is to check your valve on it. And one tricky thing about asymmetrical rims that a lot of people don't notice is some of them, especially the older ones, have right here a valve spacer that's offset to one side. And a lot of carbon, a lot of offset rims do have this. Don't lose it. It's a really important thing to have. Because basically what will happen is if you try to put your valve in it and you try to smash this lock ring on it, air's going to probably leak out to one side the way that these are dished. So that's an important thing to have. So make sure you don't lose this little guy right here. So now I got a tube in my tire, and that's going to help seat my new rim tape, and it's going to help my tire get rid of any kind of kinks that came when it was folded. If your tire was folded when it came, Maxxis a lot of times comes with zip ties, and it happens. It really binds them up. This is not only going to help the rim tape seat, the tire get a better shape, but it's going to help when we pull out the tube. We're going to have one sidewall stuck exactly where we want it to be, so when we put sealant in and make it tubeless, it's perfect. Okay, so I got my hole, and I make sure that my Presta tip is screwed down. Now you want this to come out straight. I don't know if it's been a while since people have used tubes. Maybe use tubes on other bikes. So much mountain biking is now tubeless. And what do I need to make sure to remember now? If you guessed the washer on the offset rim, you're correct. Not all manufacturers do this with offset rims, but I'm going to put this guy on, and then I'll put the nut on, and I'm going to try not to use tire levers as much as possible on my new rim tape, and I'm just going to seat one side and get the other side on. Even when you're pumping it up, you should, and have a tube in it, you should still feel that bead seat and get that ping pong, or at least one. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, and that is the max 60 psi. This may sound crazy, but I like to leave them pumped up a little bit extra overnight, and get them, you can even put them in the sun if you need your tires to get a little bit more shape to them, or if you need them to kind of like get rid of a kink that came in packaging. It's been overnight. I let this all set, and the goal is, remember, we want to keep the bead of the tire that's closest to where the spoke holes are on the outer edge. We want to keep this side intact. For this step, I took my valve core out of my valve stem, and I'm going to have it ready to go. And I have it in the core remover tool ready for the last step. That's really important, and you want to keep it handy right there. Of course, you need your sealant. Of course, you need your tire lever and your air supply. Either way you want to go. I'm going to start off by loosening my nut that was holding the tube on, and remember, you got to keep this thing, your spacer, space nut, and I'm gonna let some pressure out. I have it orientated the way that I know I want it to be. I'm taking off this edge and I'm leaving the offset side. What I like to do is just with my hand, not a tire lever, push off or in the side that is gonna actually come out. And I'm being careful not to push that other side off or break that bead that I'm trying to keep so dearly. Okay, now I'm gonna find a good spot. I like to go between the spokes if I am gonna use a tire lever. Now we're just gonna pull this tire carefully around. Okay, now, where's my valve stem? I'm gonna push this guy through and carefully pull it out. Alright, now I want to be careful and set it down, especially if you have a nice little padded surface. And then keep these tubes. Tubes, there's a lot of cool things for patching tires, tubeless tires now, but if you have, for example, what I had on my last wheel set, actually this one, if you ding the rim or something like that, a tube is so handy, so we're just going to keep these tubes. Okay, now, I'm going to take my valve and rubber washer and my valve spacer, or my space nut, as I like to call it. One key trick is never over tighten your valves, because it'll actually make air come out. You think that you're actually sealing it better, but you're not. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put part of the tire back on. I like to make sure I start with the valve and work my way down. Making sure not to unseat the offset side. Now I've left myself some room, and I'm going to put in my sealant. When I add my sealant, I just go a little bit more than they would say a lot of times for the tire size, just a little bit more. Not much, you don't want to overdo it. Now I'm going to put this tire back on. There she goes. I got my offset side intact, and I just seated the other side. Oh, this is important. Keeping your valve core remover tool and your valve core ready. And I'm going to take my air supply. Ooh, what did I forget? My safety glasses. I like that when I'm using an air compressor, just in case something happens. Okay, that's really hard. Now the trick is keeping your finger over it for a second. You can lose some air and trying to get that valve core back in. If you lost the air, that's fine. Valve core in. I think we got her. Okay, what you want to look for is this equal bead all the way around your tire. All the way around your tire. Then what I like to do, just spin it around. Just take the axle and spin it around. And getting that sealant all the way in there. Checking to see if I have any wobbles. Wow, that is really good. I love it. Okay, some people would like to just take this out on the trail right now. I usually like to let it sit for a while, and then I want to take it on a moderate ride, and I want to check for leaks, especially around your valve. All right, we did it. You did it. You're gonna do it. If you want to check out my next video, I'll give you a little bit of what kind of air compressor setup I have and some of the trials and tribulations I went through with that. Like with everything, it's an adventure. Ride the chaos. Yeah.